welcome back to my channel. This is Life of Interruptions with me, Pearl Osa, and we've been having a good time for the last 5 weeks. Again, I'm going to ask you to like. If you haven't subscribed, please do the obvious and click the notification bell so that you know when we load something new. We usually try to do that every Friday. We try to be consistent, and God's been faithful. We have been up until this point. So we've been talking about various things, and you'd notice that I try to talk about life in a nice, light, fun manner, and just talk about the things that affect us all. And something that people often ask me is, how do you cope as a mom of 10? In my last conversation that I had with the children, you would have picked up that we talked about how they do their chores and the fact that we don't have any help. And I promised that I was going to take you through the Nanny Diaries. Take you through what the nannies have taken me through. I've seen things, people. So we're at a point now where I've just decided we're not gonna have help for the foreseeable future, and we'll see what transpires thereafter. It is not easy, and I don't know how I did it, and I don't want to know how I did it. Sometimes I think that if you have the formula, you kind of just mess the whole thing up, you know what I mean? But when you're in ignorance, you're really aware of the fact that it's not by your power, it's not by your grace, it's not your intelligence, it's nothing you could have done. It was just by the grace of God. So I want to talk about how we got to this point of having no nannies. Very interesting stories of the various ones we've been through and the things they've taken us through. Again, if you hear any children in the background or you hear any noise, I've opened the window. I just don't want to be hot, and the baby's all around the house. We can't stop life because mommy is recording videos, right? Like, we've got to be real. So let's just go through the stories of nannies, and I would encourage you to please just comment below what your experiences have been. I've heard some really scary stories from a story a friend told me of a lady who, her cousin actually, had left the baby with the domestic worker, nanny, house help, I don't know the various words you use, and she was returning from work to find this woman with the baby about to enter into public transport. Guys, I need you to, and this would have been it, like the Lord just ordered her footsteps at the right time, you know. So people have been through the most. There's been a lot of videos doing the rounds lately of domestic helpers beating children almost to within an inch of their lives in some cases. I mean, really, really brutal stuff that we've seen. And so everyone just thinks in this day and age, I need to have CCTV coverage at home. And I think just seeing that and the recent spate of child trafficking and all that just made me convinced that I had made the right decision. But let's take you through the stories, because I mean, some people might be watching in another country and thinking, what's the big deal? We live without domestic help, you know, and we've got good daycare facilities for our children, whatever the case might be. In Africa, I find that not to be the case. I think the daycare facilities on average might not be that affordable. The really, really good ones that stimulate the child and get the child ready. There's so many reasons parents prefer to keep their children at home for the longest time possible. And domestic help is just a whole lot more affordable. But you know, there's this saying where they say to be penny wise and pound foolish. In other words, all that glitters is not gold. So the fact that these things or these services come relatively inexpensive, sometimes you pay in other ways for this inexpensive service. There was a friend of ours who, he told us his own child, we know the child, of course we know the friend, they had fallen asleep in the lounge. I don't know if it was, you know, after dinner and they'd watched movies or whatever, they fell asleep, and something at midnight just makes the wife wake up. She says, I woke up, looked at the clock, it was 12, and I looked, and here was the nanny. I think she was hanging over me, taking the child and about to walk out the door. And I held her, I'm like, what are you doing? And she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. The witchcraft coven that I belong to has asked that I must bring a child. At 12 o'clock, people, reality. This is Africa, yeah? So my stories have not been that freaky, but they were enough for me to not take a chance, you know, because you realize that your children are the most important thing, the most important assets. They're not even, I don't know how to put it, you know, they're not a thing, they're not an asset. But it's not just that when someone comes in your house, all they're doing is cooking and cleaning and looking after the house. I mean, they can steal things, that's fine, but human beings, your precious human being that you carried for 9 months. People, it's serious. So when I was in formal employment, I desperately relied on domestic help. I needed to have domestic help. When I came out of corporate employment, for some reason my schedule was even busier than when I was at work, because I think work is very controlled. You're up in the morning, you're at the office, you're back, it's those 8 hours, you know what you're doing. But when I wasn't employed, my time just was more dynamically spent, and there was more pressure on that time. So it was really important to have help at home. I was constantly in speaking engagements, I was writing the books, it was hectic stuff. Then we picked on homeschooling, and you'd be homeschooling one group of children and the others needed to be stimulated, entertained, kept out of trouble and looked after. So owing to the number of children we had, domestic help was something that I really thought I needed. And I think because of that desperation, they might have been able to smell the desperation from afar, because these people have treated me all sorts of ways. So my first one was a family member. You know how we do? Just like, oh, I've got a cousin or a what in the village, she's not really doing much, send her this way. So this young lady came over, we sent her to school. She was in school in the mornings. And in any case, at that time I was at work, so it worked fine. And my son would go off to creche, we call it here, or kindergarten, so it was okay. Then she'd fetch him in the afternoon. When she was done with school, come home. The arrangement worked fine, and her salary was split between physical cash that I would give to her and her fees that I was paying for her. And then she had timed it that when she was going to matriculate and finish her last exams, she was going to leave. She didn't warn me, she didn't tell me, I didn't have any preparations. That's not the bad part. I mean, I think all of them pretty much did that. And we're all used to that. They leave on a Sunday, you don't know if they're coming back. That's not the big deal. The big deal is she had gotten into a certain company while being in Johannesburg. And that company had been asking her like, yo, you don't steal from your employer. When now you're blind. When now you're not sharp, you don't understand how to do these things, blah, 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 blah. So they schooled her. Now, where she used to stay, the servants' quarters were right next to storage rooms that we had, and my mom had some stuff she had kept in storage in those storage rooms. I had some stuff I'd kept in storage in those storage rooms. It was nice luggage, it was linen, it was clothing, it was all sorts of stuff, decorative items, etc., etc. So they had said to her, clean her out, So on the day that she's finishing school, she hires movers, guys. She hires movers, okay, to come and rob me clean. Now, because most of what she took, the smaller items she took from within the house, like my jewelry, some clothing, I missed that because I guess I had quite a bit, so I wasn't, ladies stuff, you have a lot of stuff, you don't go to the same item that often. So by the time you're going back to that piece of jewelry, it's like, oh, where is that? Maybe I misplaced it. Maybe I put my earrings in the bathroom, So those I could miss. But the things that were in the domestic quarters, I didn't use on a daily basis. So that guys, cooler boxes, she hired movers and took them away. Now here's what happens when you're a child of God. I didn't know all of this was happening, but she goes home. Number one, she failed the exams that I had spent how long and how much paying for her to go to school. She failed. Then she registers in another school there, spends her money. Now this is her own cash. And she didn't fail, but she discovered after paying them huge lump sum that they were fly-by-night institution. They were not registered. They didn't. All of a sudden, but they said this was the building. She can't find the building. She's paid her money. They're not picking up phones, So now I'm sitting here in Johannesburg and my angels are on extra duty. I had no idea. I had not wished her any ill. I just let it go. But this was the part that was really scary. When she got home, having done this to us, her mother began to get very, 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 very sick. Very sick. And her siblings kept asking her, you could not have afforded all of this off of a salary. Where did you get these things from? And she would tell them, oh no, they blessed me with this stuff when I was leaving. They gave me these things when I was leaving. It's like, they gave you. Are you sure? Are you sure? And the more she would tell these lies, the iller and iller, if there's any such word, the more sick her mother got, close to death. So the siblings then did an intervention for her, and they told her, you know what? It's quite evident to us that you have stolen. And in stealing, you've stolen from people who did you well and who clearly have God watching over them or something. You are bringing a curse, not just to yourself, but to this very house. So tell us the truth. Where did you get these things from? What's the story? Or you're going to lose our mother. And if we lose her, we're going to blame you. Then she starts to spill the beans. I mean, her mother was a lovely person. She was a very lovely person, I think. I think she was poorly influenced or whatever the case might be. I don't know. That's history, and it was dealt with. So she tells them the whole story, and they say to her, what? The same way you hired transport to bring somebody else's things here. Oh yeah, start to pick up everything, we're going. And then she calls and she says, I need to come. I think her sister called us to say, this is what our sister has done, and we're coming with her, we want to come and apologize and blah, blah, blah. I mean, when she came in with the stuff that she had stolen, I was moved. I was shook. I was shaken. Suitcases, cooler boxes. I didn't have space for. I looked at her. I'm like, why? How? Did I offend you to that extent? So anyway, we talked about it. She apologized. We forgave her. And her mom made a complete turnaround and recovery and was healed. She died many years later. And, you know, as if the story wasn't funny enough, when my mom now went, because they were family, when she went for the funeral and she was housed in, you know, this relative of ours who used to work with us is now established. She now is married. She now works in corporate formal employment, and her husband goes on and on about how she was so well trained during her years of being with us, because the house is just, you know, the little habits she picked up from me, you know, the fragrances and the carpet fresheners and the blah blah blah. She took all of that, and even the same fragrance, she's like, I still love lavender because of you. So you know, the relationship was quite cordial. But my mom was like, I was shown into a room and laid down on blankets that I had gone with her mom, you know, as culture demands, they had gone to go buy the items that would be sent to my in-laws. Now, because my in-laws are not in South Africa, all of those things were packaged and kept in that storeroom, you know, blankets and mats and what. So she had come and she had cleared all my marriage items that were supposed to go to my relatives, to my in-laws. She had taken those. My mom was like, even though she had brought stuff back, had apologized and had said story, I was still lying on these blankets. I was looking at my sheets being used as curtains, and you know. So that was story number one of what we went through. I wrote them down, guys. So if you see me keep looking down, it's because I didn't want to forget the story in order. So I'm going to be looking for all the story. Okay. Then we moved on to the second one. The second one came when my second born. You know, it's almost as if I've had a nanny per child. So I remember the stories in that way. The second one came, and she was a young lady from Zimbabwe. Very well spoken, very well educated. Very ambitious, which I think is normal. You see, the thing with being a house help of any sorts, it's not a demeaning job, I don't think. I think it's something that if I had to do to feed my family, I wouldn't think twice. I've got no qualms. I'll do what needs to be done. These are backbones and pillars of our society. These are mothers holding up, sending children to school, doing the best they can with what they have. And there's nothing wrong with them aspiring for more. But you know that there are some people who that's just their calling. It is their calling. It's not a demeaning thing. It is their calling to be that particular support in a family, to allow those within the family to go out and do that which they've been called or mandated to do. That's why my husband always says, no one works for you, they work with you. And many of you watching will know that you've grown such a dependence on your domestic helpers, that they are part of the family, that they are like second mothers to your children. So it's not a demeaning job unless you make it one. You who does it or you who employs them. It's how you treat people, you know what I mean? So this young lady had qualified as a nurse from Zimbabwe. I mean, she spoke with more swang and twang than I do. very polished girl. She was just put under these circumstances by virtue of the government of the day in her nation, and had to do what she had to do to make ends meet. So the nature of the work just was not suited to her. I remember this poor child would cry when she had to feed my daughter. You know how babies are, they just don't want to eat, they want to play. The baby would scream to eat, and she would scream to feed her. She's a mother herself now of a daughter, and I'm sure she looks back and she's just like, oh, that was preparation. You know, these children just don't like to eat. But I could just tell she wasn't happy. And so when she was leaving at the end of the year, and she came by my office to pick up her salary to go home for Christmas, I think it was, I said to her, you're not coming back, are you? And she says, no. And I said, then why didn't you tell me? You know the inconvenience you create for a person now having to sit around and hope that they're not going to give you a job away and wait for someone else. And she apologized. And I think she migrated through contacts with friends of ours that she had met while working in our home. So you see, there was a reason for that season in her life. Today she's an accomplished chef. I think she's attempting masters or honors or something, doing quite well. So you know, we parted on a nice note. But then following from her came another young lady, also from Zimbabwe. And we worked together. She was extremely sluggish. You know, she took forever to get everything done. It was tough. And so I used to try and time her, like, you know, we would high five over the fact that she managed to get whatever assignments done by X o'clock or whatever. At this time, we still had 2 children. I think we were going for the 3rd. Might have had 2 or 3, I can't remember. And she then, she left at some point. Like, it just wasn't working, so she left. Then she couldn't find anything out there. And she then begged some friends of ours to let her back in. We didn't have help at the time. It was quite tough, so we took her back in. Only to find that she was pregnant and wanted something where she could quickly earn some money to be able to look after. So the reason she left in the first place is because she'd found this boyfriend, and he had made her a madam, and she didn't want to be no one's girl, you know, and she could be her own woman. So she moved in with her boyfriend, whatever. She started her own business. She was doing, she used to do hair. And you know, the funny thing is that with all the people who worked with us, where we would have conversations, I would always inquire, what's your goal in life? Where are you going? What you want to do? And I always used to speak over her life that, you know, I see you one day with your salons. You're going to do well. You're going to do great things. And I don't regret speaking that way to her, you know, all the time. My mom had a helper who she kept speaking that way to, and she said, you know, you've got to go back to school. And she nagged until she went back to school. She went back to school, she graduated, got her degree, built a house. She's doing well. Do you know, till today, if she's on holiday, she works in government now, right? But just that bond that was formed, if my mom was like, oh, I need help, it's in my house, please, she would leave her job, come to Johannesburg, and she would help to do dishes and clean, because a bond was formed and a person was given that impression that you're more than this work that you do, you know. So I had this relationship with this young lady, but I kept saying, like, she just went fresh. She went like extra beautiful on me. I was like, her face, you know, we're women, we know these things. I'm like, what's going on? She's like, you know, then the stomach would swell. She was very drowsy, always wanted to sleep. Then you'd see her tie the stomach as tight as possible so she could hide the, and I'm saying to her, I know, here, there's something. We then said, do a pregnancy test. But smart us, like, I don't want to go in the bathroom and be with you making a wee. Especially because she said that, you know, she doesn't know what's wrong, and so we thought she'd be really desperate to prove to us, listen, I'm innocent. She said she was a virgin. So we do the test. She obviously exchanges with water. She comes out. The test is negative. We're like, how? Then my husband says, no, let's take you to a doctor. This is not healthy. What's going on? No. They're bewitching me from home. My uncle, what. I had a dream. They called me. They say, hey, the people who don't like you are. So, you know, here we are really interceding for her. And she was paying fees for her sister back home. So she comes to me one day and she says, I have bad news. What's the bad news? My sister. Now I'm pregnant. She says, my sister died. You know, till today when people die, no one tells me. And so people who've been bereaved, or they look at me, I'm still there joking with them, and they think I'm so insensitive because they know, you don't tell me about death, I can't handle it, like I flip. Guys, I wept. I wept, my body was heaving. My husband is trying to calm me down. You're pregnant, you can't get so hyper. Why are you doing this? And you can see she gets a fright. Because she's thinking, I'm the one whose sister died. This is what I'm thinking at the time. You're crying more than me. But I really, I thought, Mugabe, how? You're causing people to leave their families. She's not even there. How did she die? Some story, she says she went for sports in another city, and then there were jacaranda trees all around, and she's allergic to those trees. And then in that place where she went for the sports activity, she inhaled this pollen, and they couldn't save her. And the medical things at home. My sister died swollen like an elephant. Guys, I saw the picture. I wept. So she had to leave early. She didn't go no home. She went and had her baby, and then sent me a message through another lady who used to do our ironing to say, please let her know I've had a baby girl. I just ignored the message. I was just like, you know what, that's between you and God. Now you would notice I said another lady. So I never wanted anyone who worked with us to feel extreme pressure or the burden of the work, because my standards are quite high and I like what I like. So I then said, especially with children, and I want you to be able to focus on the children, them having been bathed and fed and cared for takes paramount importance for me over and above the house was clean. But then again, I can't stand a dirty house. So we would then, I couldn't stand a dirty house. Let me tell you what motherhood would do to you. So we would have someone who comes in and would do laundry and iron, so you take that burden off her, and she can handle other things in like a formatted approach. Anyhow, so she went off and she had her baby, so that was her. Then comes another one. This one was a congregant, a new convert of a friend of ours who pastored a church. And in wanting to help, you've led this person to the Lord, you've taught them about salvation, but they are in economic dire straits. I'm looking around, who can help with the job? So I'm like, I need someone, no problem. They bring this person, and it's my friend. She goes to this person's church. I'm getting the sense that my friend can vouch for her. She comes over. Shay, this lady had a drinking problem of note. You could just see weekend come was a weekend. She was just trying to hold on, because the booze was calling. But at the end of the first month, she couldn't take it anymore. It was a few days to the month end. I hadn't paid her yet. Month end was going to be Monday. But on Friday, her friends were calling and saying, you're going to still be there. Girl, the club is pumping. The party is on. Booze has been bought. You're there. You're sleeping. So we went out, and she had no idea when we'd be back home. On our return back, we bump into her outside, and we're like, where are you going? And she says, she was on the phone and talking to us at the same time, but she was just like, no, I left clothes upstairs. I need to go get them from the lab. I didn't factor at the time, you're going to get clothes, but you don't have a dish. Like, how are you gonna carry the whole bundle? Where are you gonna put the pegs? I didn't add 2 and 2. I was just like, okay, because Nami, I'm arriving home, I'm trying to settle down. I arrive at the door, find she'd left the doors all open, gates open, burglar bars open, doors open, and I have 3 children in the house, a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 1-year-old, left alone in the house. The poor children were oblivious to what was going on. I get in, and someone tells me cupboard. Check in the cupboard, she had taken the exact amount that was her salary, and she was gone, few by. Didn't see her again. Okay. So we move on. We get another one. I'm sure there was many in between, but I remember now my 4th child arrives, and this time it was like really, really tough with the maids. Going through agencies, they're bringing people, but there's just no peace. The one lady, I come in and find her holding him in her arms, like you would hold a baby, that makes sense, but then she had one of his toys, and she was doing chants. I don't know, she was chanting and doing invocations and looking to the heavens and speaking stuff. Guys, I was shooked. And then we went into I didn't say anything. I was just like, okay, this I need to observe. So I take my child, act like I don't see, take my child. I pray over this child, like, what is this woman doing? And then one Sunday we were heading to church, and I'd forgotten something in the house. I had to run back in. Something told me, just look in her bag. Like, I always respect their privacy. Just look in her bag. I go and look in the bag. I see voodoo. And I'm thinking, okay, clearly it's just two very different belief systems. And you're there doing your shuki thing over my son. This is not going to work. So we get back from church and I just said to her, it's been nice, it's been real, I'm done. Oh, why? No. You know what? And she was a little older. So I used that as an excuse. I think I told her, like, you know, with the age, I'm just not so certain she'd be able to keep up and blah, 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 blah. But you know what? It's been good. Thank you. It was 1 week or 2 weeks. I just said go. Brought someone else, and that someone else now had a dream. And in this dream, the same child, she took this child and she battered this. When I say that, I woke up sobbing from my dream. Not like a tear, not weeping. I was shaking with tears from what I had seen in the dream. It affected me so much in real life. She had taken this baby and she had taken his head and she was flinging it and smashing and beating and I came and I grabbed my child like this was in a dream. Guys, dream is enough. No, I don't need to experiment with my children. I wake up the next morning, I'm just like, thou shalt not have returneth. Because this was one of those day in, you know, come every day and then leave in the evening. I was just like, please don't. That was someone screaming. But it's not a scream of blood. No? You need to learn the difference between those screams where it's like I'm fighting with someone and the screams where if you don't come now, we need an ambulance, blah, blah, blah. So if you ever hear one of those, and by God's grace we won't, then you see my reaction is different. Otherwise, if you hear children crying and you see me chilled, don't think I'm a negligent mother. I'm just schooled on the different interpretations of cries. I've learned it by now. So with that one, we ended up, I can't remember who we eventually ended up with. Then came the 5th child.